Beep, 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 beep. Welcome to the Court of the EDI Jester. How are we, everyone? Warrior Teacher Programme starting in October for newbies. And the second year next cohort will be in November. Details going up shortly. Please do buy me a coffee if you can, or do a super thanks thing. There's, you can do one of those, can't you? Super thanks. Or anyway, you can support me by becoming a member of my Substack or whatever it may be. I'd be grateful if you could. I've got some news, and I'm rather chuffed about this news. Not because it's anything to do with me, but because it's just a good piece of news. Okay? So it's from the Telegraph, and it involves the marvellous, the indomitable Kemi Badenoch. Kemi, who goes for it, full-time. Gender-neutral averages are an invasion of women's privacy. There you go. Absolutely no mistaking that. I'd like to thank you for listening. No, I'm kidding. Okay, so we are standing up for common sense and ensuring everyone is treated with dignity and sensitivity by Kemi, which came out on the 13th. And so it's, today, 6 a.m., away we go. I would never have guessed when I first became an MP how much time I would spend looking at toilet policy. Is it me, or do we think that Kemi has a dry sense of humour? What's the bet in? We should start a tote, right, and see whether or not does Kemi. Somebody do a poll. Does Kemi have a dry sense of humour? We'll see what the public thinks. What's the public's view on this? We could do with something that people really need to know from a poll after that ridiculous nonsense from YouGov the other day, with the look up at the Baku people. Right, okay. So I would spend, but increasingly, my job is spent legislating for common sense and stopping people determined to do destructive things. I sincerely hope that the legislative agenda coming forward from the Conservative Party, Kemi, is filled with that. A decade ago, there was no need to clarify who could use which toilet. However, in today's world, some are trying to redefine biological sex to mean however one chooses to identify. This has led to multiple instances of organisations, from schools to music venues, removing single-sex, male-only or female-only toilets and replacing them with gender-neutral versions. This is compounded by an assumption that a private and self-contained unisex toilet and a gender-neutral toilet are the same thing, but they are not. That is why today the government is setting out clearly what the difference is and what best practice toilet design should look like. The debate around sex-based rights has become confused. Basic tenets of everyday life, such as the right to privacy in a single-sex space, are framed as transphobic by a vocal minority of activists. They won't like that, will they? They don't like it. Up 'em. Mr. Mandarin! So when women should have exclusive access to public toilets, facilities reserved specifically for them, men should have the same. There's my chicken ticker. Men should have the same. Female loos must have cubicles, while male ones can have urinals. Transgender people should have privacy. The sign on the door should clearly tell you what to expect. Yet, women increasingly find the space they understood to be their own fitted out with urinals, supposedly to accommodate anyone who identifies as a gender different from their biological sex. This has led to perverse outcomes. Good choice of word. Recently, doctors reported that girls at some schools that had installed gender-neutral toilets had been skipping school or picking up infections because they refused to urinate all day out of fear of using the facilities. It's like the urinary leash, isn't it? We're back there again. There were no toilets for women in Victorian times. It was known as a urinary leash, and it was designed to keep women in the house. I mean the house. I don't mean, is there any women in the house? I mean the house. All right? Literally, keep them in the house. After refurbishment in 2019, the Old Vic Theatre in London added a host of new gender-neutral toilets in a misguided attempt to remove sex-based distinctions. The predictable result was a significant reduction in facilities for women who were expected to pass through urinal blocks to access a stall. We want a society where transgender people are treated with respect and sensitivity, but this needs to be done sensibly. For obvious reasons, women face longer queues than men to use the toilet. We have physical needs that are more complex, from menstruation to pregnancy and menopause. Female-only toilets give women the peace of mind that they will be shielded from having their privacy violated. Unisex toilets are very different to gender-neutral facilities. A unisex toilet is similar to a bathroom in a family home. A fully enclosed room with a hand basin and lockable door, and in my case, a good book. That's a male thing, I think. Somebody else do another poll. Is reading on the toilet a male thing? Come on, let's do some polls that matter to the people. This would also be seen in a venue like a small cafe. There may only be space for a single unisex toilet. A gender-neutral facility is a mixed-sex facility where men and women use the same toilet cubicles and the same facilities to wash and dry their hands. Providing a unisex option means transgender people have a private facility where they won't be subject to invasive questions, and they should be accessible so disabled people can use them with greater ease. Last year, I committed to changing building guidance so that new public buildings should have separate, clearly demarcated single-sex lavatories. Today, the government is publishing that draft guidance that will protect the dignity, privacy and safety of all. We are also publishing guidance which will make clear that gender-neutral toilets are no longer an option. No longer an option. No doubt there will be cries from our ideological opponents that this is the government fighting culture wars. Others who do know better feel topics like this are beneath them and will complain that we should focus on the economy, not on toilet privacy. As if it isn't possible to do both. Our job as a government is to speak for those who have no voice and regulate where there is a market or common sense failure. The Conservatives are the only party who will speak for everyday people on this issue. The former SNP and Lib Dem leaders Nicola Sturgeon and Joe Swinson both lost their jobs shortly after making nonsensical comments. Redefining what a woman is. Off you go, Swinson and Sturgeon. That's the SSC too. Right, okay. Keir Starmer's own Labour-run Camden Council turned women's public toilets on the high streets into gender-neutral ones. It even marketed the replacement of women's toilets in the town hall as an improvement. Labour. Just... Oh dear. Keir Starmer. Starmer the Harmer. Didn't we have Thatcher the Milk Snatcher? Let's have Starmer the Harmer. That'll do. The Conservatives are the only party of common sense. We won't sit idly by as schoolgirls get infections because they feel uncomfortable using gender-neutral loos. We will never be ashamed of defending the right to privacy and dignity for all, no matter how trendy the opposition or how vocal the outrage. We will intervene where common sense disappears. Now, if one was a very silly person, which of course I am, one would read between the lines and one would say, this is the first salvo in the coming pre-election cultural war, and it's going to be worth watching this space. It begins. The consultation's open. Now the consultation's up and running. We'll, I'm sure, get a link to that at some point, or it will become available and somebody will put it on the interwebs for us because I couldn't find it. Not in the article, so I'm hoping that will, so you can go and say your piece. Go and say your piece. We only need two types of toilets, right? The main ones, male and female. Then we need a separate one called the disabled toilet, which is there for people who need extra help or who need a particular setup in order to safely carry out their ablutions and do private things in a private space. Male, female, disabled. That's it. It's not complicated, and I don't think Kemi thinks it's complicated either. So watch this space. Let's see what happens. It's an opening salvo. And we'll see what happens now with Starmer and his renegade bunch of tossers in Labour. The Liberal Democrats, whose leader I don't even know who it is because I've given up even bothering to think what they're up to. But most of all, by all the trans rights activists and absolute nutter lunatic allies that are going to be frothing at the mouth this evening because of this one small article. Game on, kids. We're coming. Get ready. See you later.